Hello, Trail Seeker, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Learn True Health podcast. This episode is very interesting. We kind of go all over the place at the beginning. We talk about different topics, very interesting stuff. My guest today was able to lose 100 pounds and keep it off, but that's not why we have him on the show. We have him on the show because he is amazing at teaching lessons that help us to work through emotional issues. And when I say emotional issues, I mean like when emotions come up in the present and they are not making our life fantastic, like frustration, anger, jealousy, rage, regret, sadness. As those things come up in your life and you have conflicts, both inner conflicts and conflicts with people in our life, as well as the negative self-talk, his system is quite amazing, and he teaches it to us today. That is going to be in the last third of the episode. So just know as you go through listening to this, it's a really fun conversation. We talk about a lot of different topics that lead us into this, learning from him, the system that he has developed through his years of study around personal growth and emotional intelligence. I think you'll really like listening to him. He's a lot of fun. He's very uplifting. Remember to make sure to listen to the last third of this episode so that you learn his tool that you can immediately begin to apply to your life to start to have an amazing experience of personal growth through the little things that happen in the day. Even something as simple as being frustrated at traffic can lead to a big aha moment for you as you do the work that he teaches us to do today. So enjoy today's episode. And as you're listening to the first part of it and you're thinking, man, I'd love to become healthier, learn what should my body eat? What should I eat to get healthy? How do I balance blood sugar? How do I gain a healthy existence with food, with nutrition? How do I lose weight if that's one of your goals, or energy, mental clarity, better sleep, balanced hormones? As you're listening, if you begin to have those kind of thoughts come to your mind, I'd love to work with you. Let's do a discovery session together. You can go to learntruehealth.com/chat and sign up for our free discovery session together. I look forward to talking to you. Another thing worth mentioning is that we talk about the I Thrive docuseries, and I want to make sure you have access to it. If you're interested in learning about what we discussed, this man who was morbidly obese, had heart disease, had issues with his feet where they were thinking of amputating his feet, had type 2 diabetes that was out of control. He was on multiple medications, and then he used food to heal his body. And this whole docuseries is about his journey. It's so cool. And all the holistic medicine and all the holistic doctors that teach along the way. If you're interested in listening to that, then please go to learntruehealth.com/iThrive. That's learntruehealth.com/iThrive. The link to that will be in the show notes of today's podcast. It's an amazing docuseries. I highly recommend watching it. It's very motivational and also will teach wonderful things about using nutrition and food to heal the body. I know you'll enjoy it. Welcome to the Learn True Health podcast. I'm your host, Ashley James. This is episode 321. We are going to have so much fun today. We have with us Jeremy Koester. I asked him, how do I pronounce your last name? And he's like, it rhymes with roller coaster. Or no, it just sounds like roller coaster. That's right. Jeremy Koester. So when you think of him, think of roller coaster, because this is going to be a lot of fun today. So Jeremy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ashley. I'm really excited to be here and honored to be talking with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Jeremy and I met about a year ago, or a little bit more than a year ago. Time really flies. You were working with the creators of I Thrive, which is an amazing docuseries that teaches people how to regain their health, not only completely eliminate diabetes, but also heart disease and obesity, all with food as medicine. I've talked about I Thrive on the show before, and I encourage listeners to go check it out because I think it was a really great docu-series. But Jeremy, you were working with them, and that's how I got to know Jeremy. And it turns out he is an amazing man who helps people to grow personally and emotionally. And he has a few businesses helping people with their health. And he also has a business helping professionals like holistic health professionals to learn how to build their tribes online. So for those who are professionals that are listening right now, and for those who want personal health as well, I think everyone's going to benefit from learning from Jeremy today. So I'm really excited.
Man, I'm just like sitting in the glow of all of the just beautiful things that you just said. Thank you so much for all of that. I really appreciate it. And it's like, yeah, I'm excited to be able to talk with you because I know you guys have had some amazing people on your podcast, and I know you have great followers too, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Now, as you hear in Jeremy's voice, there's a lot of enthusiasm and excitement. And I can tell you that's how he sounds all the time.
Yep, I'm a pretty positive dude. And I'm sure we're going to get to some story about how I've come to learn what I've learned, but it's definitely a choice to be really positive in my life, And so it's intentional. It's not just like a happenstance. Oh, this guy's positive, I'm not going to tune that out. It's just the way that I choose to live my life.
Absolutely. You have an amazing story. I definitely want to get into it. For me, one of the highlights is the fact that you were able to overcome things emotionally and physically and get your head to the space where you lost 100 pounds and you've kept it off for 6 years now. And I congratulate you. That is a huge feat. I saw the statistics that it's more than 98% of people who lose a significant amount of weight, will gain it back.
Yeah.
So you've beaten that statistic. I think it was something like 0.8% of people can lose a significant amount of weight and keep it off long term is what it came down to. That is almost impossible. And so you've done something. Definitely I want to learn from you.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's funny actually because I didn't even know about that until I was working with I Thrive this last year.
So when you started working with them, like I want to get into your story, but
Okay.
I'd also want to get into learning a bit from you. Like what did you take away from working for I Thrive? So let's start with that, and then get into your story. Like right off the bat, when you worked with them, what were some big takeaways that you had?
I mean, just that it is possible to reverse type 2 diabetes. I know so many people like just think that they're stuck in this way of living and, the things that they have that they're facing. And, just the complications that come along with that oftentimes can get a lot of confusion and, yeah, that their answers are out there. So keep going. If you're listening to this and you're like, I don't know about all that. I mean, it's absolutely possible that there's so much information out there that we're learning more almost every day about our own health and what's possible and what we can do with our human bodies. It's just beautiful. So I love the hope that I Thrive brings. And if you get the chance to go check him out, John is a beautiful, big, giant heart. He has reversed his own type 2 diabetes. When I joined them, he was morbidly obese, about over 300 pounds, and I've watched him go through all of the things and reverse it.
That's so cool. And didn't he also have like high blood pressure and heart disease, and he was like losing the feeling in his feet, and
Yep.
it was amazing. Now he looks
Yeah.
like an athlete.
Yeah. He, as with all diabetic situations, it brings on all sorts of complications and things that oftentimes are way more significant of a health risk than the diabetes itself. And so it's like just this laundry list. That was the other thing that I learned is, when diabetes shows up, it brings like a pack of its buddies that are going to beat up on you for a long time. So yeah, it's beautiful that we have solutions out there and that we're getting out that information to really turn around just bad medicine, bad information, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had
Yeah.
type 2 diabetes and I reversed it with food and with supplements, supporting
Hmm.
my body with nutrition, basically. Yeah, so let's get into your story because
Of course.
you have not only healed your body, but I believe you also were battling with with emotional issues as well. So yeah, let's take us
Yeah.
all the way back. What happened in your life that led you to be this amazing person that you are? I know you're a healer,
Mm.
you're a teacher. You do so many things to help people grow personally and also health wise. What happened in your life that gave you this experience that made you want to go and help others?
Wow. Thank you for that introduction. It's so flattering. Yeah, I believe what do I want to say about that? I feel like the best way to talk about it, because I really want to honor my ancestors. It's really something that's important to me. And also, too, there's the reality that I was born into a lot of generational trauma.
Mm.
My grandmother, my dad's mom, was just abused and raped until she ran away from home at 17 is the story. I don't know all the details. She left Galveston and went to Hollywood to be a starlet and met my grandfather, who's just, has all his things because he came over from Germany during the war. And that trauma that she brought with her was visited to my father, who ran away from home when he was 13. And then he did a little bit better and, still got a lot of those mental health genetics and behaviors that were passed down to me. And it was just traumatic and abusive. And of course, it came with the litany of standard American diet because, dad wasn't really given a great example on how to raise, support, and feed other humans. And
Mm.
so, I was morbidly obese by the time I was 33 and depressed beyond measure. And so much so that most of the things I experienced as a kid were just blocked out and forgotten, and I didn't really have a whole lot of like real applicable life lesson, I guess. I mean, there was some things that were, went along with the faith that I was raised in as a Christian, and it was just an identity. I was trying to be something outside of myself that wasn't authentic. I was doing what someone else told me I had to do. And, of course, with all of that litany of the history and just the genetics that were passed to me, those trauma markers in my genes and, all the things that I was predestined for with, not predestined, but like, just set up for genetically was like susceptibility to diabetes and stroke and addictive behavior, all those things I know now. And yes, I found myself in this position of not having anything really that was like, felt like I was a valuable human at 35. And it shifted. There was a little spark that shifted in my life. And I think the way I put it at the time was there had to be something more to life than this.
Mm-hmm.
And in that space, I just decided arbitrarily, I have no idea why, I just decided to change the way I use food. I didn't have any guidance. I didn't seek any guidance. This was, I don't even know, 8 years ago, 2010. Excuse me, I do know. August of 2010. And I just started making better food choices, the things that you hear about people saying, eat more greens, all these sorts of things. And for me, I knew my motivation because that's what I studied in my graduate work was games for learning. So I knew about like what I was going to be really excited about doing. So I started hacking into all of these different systems about how to change the choices that I made, and those started begetting even better choices. So it took me about 2 years to lose 100 pounds. And then in that space, I really started seeing a lot of mental health issues and just things in my life that I didn't really want. I was married in a relationship that wasn't really aligned. So I got a divorce, and that was another life difficulty that I was able to traverse. And that brought out a lot of opportunity for me to look at my mental health and really see how depressed I was when I was put into that chamber of being by myself and taking care of myself.
Mm.
Yeah. And so that really, kind of like unleashed all the demons, if you will. Um, and just really went through some dark, dark nights of soul in those few years. And long story short, just went through all sorts of different courses. I went through Avatar, I went through the Mankind Project. I reopened my own Christianity in a new way. I got into Taoism. I got into human energetics. And so all of those things that I was studying had that now inform my body of work were just really about understanding my human experience. And so, yeah, so there's all sorts of stories that I'm really glossing over. But that's kind of the nutshell of just like realizing that I wanted this thing about seeing the fullness of my life. And not just for me, but realizing that I wanted that for my relationship with my kids and how I can show up for them. Was a real big motivator for me. And so, going into all those things and the practical applications, like you said, about losing the weight, to me, it wasn't ever really about losing the weight. It was really more about being passionate about my life.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I don't know if you have any questions around any of that stuff because literally, I'm telling you, actually, there's so many like stories on top of stories about just like Hollywood level stuff that just generationally that my parents have been through and things that I've been through that you could look at as these big awful, oh, that's so horrible. But to me, I look at them as gold because going through those things, facing those things has allowed me the opportunity to develop myself into this guy that I am now, that I get to be positive and I get to live life passionately and I get to support people to feel more good and I get to support people to learn and be advocates for their own health and all these really big things that I feel like are just like me playing my part in this big human evolution that we're going through as our robot overlords come to take over, which is a whole other conversation altogether.
You mentioned teaching people how to become advocates for their health. When you first
Yeah.
start working with someone, because I know you do coaching with people, when you first start working with someone, pretend like our audience and myself are your client. Teach us how to advocate for our own health.
I typically will start with the things that are picking up in the moment. For me, the most important thing is what's present in that exchange. Because I could go take my mind to all sorts of things that I think, or take answers that they might have filled out in some sort of like precursor screening or whatever. But looking at the thing that's in that moment, and to me, everything's vibration. What I mean when I say that is the information that's being passed to the things that we believe is coming through our nervous system. And so as I share things with people, they're taking it in through their nervous system and they're making meaning instantaneously through their prior associations. And so a lot of times I'll look at exploring things that they have said that I feel like are overly limiting beliefs or some perspectives of themselves or how the world works around them. And we'll just explore them about why. Hey, I heard you say that, you're not worthy of being well, or I don't, whatever. There's all sorts of different things that are basically like not good enough mechanisms. And we just start exploring those things. That really starts this space of what I call the observer chooser loop. And I'm just, taking all these things, standing on the shoulders of giants. There's just these ideas that I really resonate with about the fact that most of us are locked in this choosing framework where what we're choosing is based on a belief system that was mostly handed to us. And we're continuing to reinforce those things that have been handed to us as if they're completely true without question. And so I don't ever say to anybody that I support that, hey, you're doing this wrong, or hey, you need to do this, or hey, you should do that. I just really open up a space to observe their choices. And what I find is that as I open that space up, what I do specifically is I just open it up with gratitude and just really support for their looking at the thing. Because to me, if we're going to make a different choice, whether or not you eat the ding dong or the cucumber, then there needs to be an internal dialogue of asking ourselves, what do I really want? Do I want the long-term benefit of that organic, naturally, locally grown cucumber? Or do I want the immediate response of this nutrient-dense, highly experiential, kill me in a couple years ding dong? And so that is, to me, is one of the big things that I really learned in supporting all those wonderful people over at iThrive is that most of these things are really about this dialogue that goes on internally where people believe the things that they're being told, that they feel like it's not possible just because there's so many examples of why they can't, right? And I remember being in that space of being overweight and feeling like I wasn't good enough. Just our society is wired to just say like, hey, if you're overweight, you're just not as good. You're obviously doing something that's wrong. It's just like this external thing that you can't get away from, and so just like to me, as I hold that space to really shift the advocacy, to me, it starts with getting into that observer. Because if I'm going to make those different shifts in what I believe and how I think and how I feel about myself, it starts with creating that container to be able to observe myself with gratitude and love and say, like, it's okay to feel however I want to feel. And in that moment, now I have the ability to come to a neutral position with my nervous system and then go into my joy intentionally and then see what's possible from that mountaintop.
I like that you brought up that to help someone advocate for their health, we need to look at those limiting beliefs, those negative decisions that we've made about ourselves on an unconscious level
Mm.
that's dictating our behavior. Most of our behavior is unconscious. We kind of just like reach for the ding dong, right?
Yeah.
And my example would be that I'm noticing lately, and I think so I've been doing a lot of work. The last 7 years I've been doing a lot of work on my health. But the last year I was working on my liver and detoxification, and now I'm working more on balancing hormones even more. So I'm I get blood work with my naturopath, and we adjust things in the diet and the supplements, and we lifestyle. And lately I've been having I've gone really like almost 100% plant-based, very close to my husband is vegan, and I'm almost there. But my naturopath wants me eating eggs and fish. So that's I don't believe in one diet dogma. I do believe in healing the body with food. And I'm noticing that I have cravings at night, and they are pretty intense. And it can be so, but I sit there, and if I'm unconscious about it, I might make bad, like what I call quote unquote bad choices. There's no ding dongs in my house. That's the first thing.
Yes.
I don't bring any ding dongs to the house. So, but if they were here at 11 o'clock at night or whatever, 9 o'clock at night, I would be reaching for them. Like that's how, it's a very strong craving. And so I've been lately having internal dialogue about the craving, like talking to it, what's going on, listening to the thoughts that come, like, and I have this sort of self-talk about it, oh, here comes the craving, guess I have to eat more, like here what I guess I'm gonna have to eat more, like what's going on, like, and so, and then I'm like, well, is that so bad? Like what? I can have an apple. Like why is this? It was a very negative self-talk about like trying to beat me up about this craving. And I have to just sit back and go like, what am I craving? And so I start asking myself questions like, maybe it's thirst. It's a lot of times when haven't drank enough water, and especially because I do sauna so much, like I really need to stay on top of my water. And that intense craving comes on at night. And it's like, sometimes it's hormonal, like so it'll come with my cycle, and it's just, just, okay, well, what's missing? Is magnesium missing? Like what's missing? But I find that if I'm unconscious about it, my negative beliefs about my ability to be healthy or make healthy choices will start beating me up, because then I'll just follow the craving and maybe overeat. Right. And so, but when I slow down and like listen to the dialogue, start asking questions and go, what do I really want? I think like last night I had a big salad. I'm like, that's fine, okay. And I drink some water, and, and then like other nights I've had an apple, and drink some water, or sometimes I'm like, you know what? Like maybe this craving is needing to just do some deep breathing, and, or maybe like, so I keep asking myself, like, what do I really need? Cause if like you said, we'll just reach for the ding dong. And if we're not slowing ourselves down enough to ask, what do I really need? What do I really want? And then if that voice says what I really want is, and it's a bad, like a unhealthy choice, then looking at and owning the consequences. Like
Yeah.
I have a coaching client that says, I did really well over the holidays, and when I did eat unhealthy, like a handful of times, she goes, I chose to. And I did it consciously. I did not unconsciously eat the entire plate of cookies. I consciously had a cookie. Like it was very
Yeah.
conscious. And so that was she felt really good about that, because it wasn't this unconscious behavior that was leading to very bad results. She was being very intentional with everything. And I like that coming to the point where you're asking yourselves, what do I really need? What do I really want? And then holding a
Mm.
space, like you said, of gratitude and love while you're doing that self exploration. I'd love to learn some more of those tricks from you, helping people to go within and do that self
Mm.
exploration so that they can begin to make healthier choices. Like when you first decided, what was that, August of 2010, you said?
Yep.
When you
Yep.
first decided to eat healthy, like, did you even know what eating healthy looked like?
Oh, no. God, it was so basic. It was like, well, I guess I have to eat more vegetables. That was really my attitude and the perspective, and really just the obviously like ignorant perspective of what was available to me in the market. That was just what my experience was up to then. Yeah. Yeah. So I think for, like thinking about all the things we just talked about coming forward for me, I think that like if I were to go back to my, like November 2010 self and like drop a little note, I think for me that the thing I've come to now is recognizing that there's kind of three things happening with our humanity all at the same time. First, and is kind of like the base level, is this body that I'm in, that is kind of the lens that I experience the world and that I share my energy with, the work that I'm actually able to show up and do and create. And so looking at like that first question to me is about what my body chemistry. And so like looking at your epigenetics, really digging into like what's going on inside my body. And I love what you said. There is no one diet that's going to be the solution, because we all have completely different genetic makeups. And what's more is we've all got different habits that have brought us to this today, and how our blood work and how the current environment of this bag of science walking around is behaving. And so like that is like this one realm that obviously, we look at like eating. What are you eating? What are you supplementing? What does your body actually need, like genetically? And, what's deficient or what's in abundance, that sort of thing. But then the second one is what you alluded to as well, is about the beliefs that we have that then set up our behaviors of how we show up and choose in the world. And I like to say, talking about kids, because I'm so passionate about kids, is that every kid that comes through experiences the world as, and, obviously the psychological frameworks of this are different, but the first, 1 to 7 or 12 or 9 or somewhere around that to adolescence is what I like to say, is that the world is I am us. And that us is this representation of whatever nuclear family that they're involved in, even if it's a foster home or a group home, or grandma and grandpa, aunt, uncle, mom, dad, whatever it is, they're looking at the world in that lens. And so taking all of that information, they're not just carbon copying everything that's presented to them. In fact, most of them are making very bizarre connections to things that might be correlated or not. I mean, kids don't have those sort of neural pathways of meaning making yet. And so as we teach our children, there's so many like elements of data sources that are coming into them. And that's the third piece that I talk about, which is spirit, or what I call energy, which is actually scientific, that is a vibration of our bodies that we pick up on each other, not just like these micro expressions about how people say things or what their face is doing or their body language or their stance or posture or any of those things, or the tone behind what they say, but there's actual vagal nerve tone that's resonating from our bodies. We talk about the Heart Math Institute, that I think that they determined that the vibration of the human heart goes out for like a mile or something like that.
Wow.
And then even like all of these like AI researching the brain and all these, they're actual like thoughts or vibrations, right? They're actual like things that go out into our environment. And I believe, in my experience as an empath, because I have a really hypersensitive gut brain, and I pick up on those things. And for the longest time, obviously based on my nurturing experience as a child, was like hyper aware of all of the people in my environment in order to make some sort of level of safety in my viewpoint as a child. And so all of these meaning making models that I was setting up then yielded to the containers that I create for the energy that I'm putting out into the world. So like if I'm eating all, well, not if, but when I was eating all this horrible food that was mostly processed, lots of sugar, lots of processed foods on top of all these other things that were just chemically derived, that were just poisoning my body. But then on top of that, I had all of these awful beliefs about who I was. And like you said, those internal beliefs, that dialogue, that when I'm faced with a choice that I've been making over and over and over again, and then I tell myself, oh, you're so awful for eating that ding dong. You're such a, but there I am sliding it down my neck without hesitation, you know, and looking at those spaces to be able to make those shifts is just been what I'm so passionate about, helping people be an advocate for themselves. Because at the end of the day, Ashley, you and I both know that when they're sitting there in that moment by themselves with that ding dong and ain't nobody watching, coaches aren't there to say, hey, don't do that. They're on their own. They've
Mm-hmm.
got that decision to make in that moment. So that's where I kind of talk about this idea of like that energy, that vibration of those feelings, and in that moment of those things that really get you to have that opportunity to be present with what you really want.
Have you read the book The Heart's Code by Paul Pearsall?
I have not, but I am writing it down.
Yeah, so you, but by exactly what you said, I figured you'd read it. So I'm sure, though, you have seen probably the research that's come out of that book. It's really, really fascinating. I recommend. It's sort of right up there with the holographic universe. That's another one. It's a book that scientifically proves that our heart, our nervous system, our energy, can communicate with others, and also our memories, which are stored holographically in the body.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
They've actually been able to solve murder cases from people who have had transplants, like heart transplants, and that person who got the heart transplant could tell you who the exact description of the person who murdered that person who gave
Yep.
the heart to them. So really just interesting. I'm sure you've heard of those, but it's not every day that we start to think about that our energetic body is as important as our physical body, and that
Oh
there
yeah.
is an energetic body.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I take a little bit different perspective on that. And I pull my work from my coach is Dr. Micah Hamilton, who's one of the, in my opinion, world's leading epigeneticists. Her and her
Mm.
husband run the Apiron Center for Human Potential. She recommended a book that is my new Bible by Penny Pierce called Transparency. And it's a lot about this idea of human vibration. And one of the things that I've read through like medical research is this idea that all of the cells in our body actually are like a memory stick of all of the vibrations that we've bathed our body in. And so all of the food that we take in literally gets fed out to the cells that then vibrates those cells. So if I'm eating things that have this negative impact, that vibration is my body and then becomes like quite literally the neurotransmitter chemical environment that my vagal nerve tone sends up to my brain that gets me to think about all of the feelings and trigger all of these emotions and memories. And looking at this idea of actual cells of my body bringing up memory of things is like what you're talking about, is this idea of like those things that have been transplanted into people have the vibration of where they came from, those literal cells.
Can you give an
And
example?
of which part? I was just talking about a lot of things.
Like I don't know, example of we're eating a food. Do you have a personal experience, like you ate a salad or you
Yes,
ate a pizza, and
yes,
can you give like a
yes.
specific example?
Yes, in fact, there's one that just happened a couple weeks ago. I was in a hurry where, again, most of my poor choices come when I don't giving my space to be intentional about my choices,
Yes.
which I advocate all day long. Give yourself a breath, just one breath, just to ask yourself, is this really what you want? I did not do that in this instance. I was cleaning out my fridge, and there was one slice of provolone left in that package. And I said, "Oh, cheese, you are mine." And down the hatch it went without a second thought, Ashley. Literally within an hour, I was in my car driving and I had to pull over because I was weeping uncontrollably. And I was just like overwhelmed by the things that were happening in my life that were just a perspective. It wasn't even that it was true. It was a perspective of possibility. And I was like, what is going on? And immediately when I held that question in my space for consideration, which is one of my tools that I use, what came up was the cheese.
Do you not normally eat cheese?
No, I've been off dairy for the longest time.
So it was in your fridge because of your kids or because someone else in your
Yeah,
house?
it was somebody else in my house. I don't even remember where it came from. It was just like one of those things that was just like, God, I love cheese. I love the taste of cheese. And there are some cheeses that I'm able to tolerate. This was not one of them. And I don't advocate for doing that. But, obviously I have room to fudge a little. Yeah, I don't even like to say it out loud because it's duplicitous, I admit, for sure. It's like a little bit of poison never killed anybody. But, if you're on the edge of it, yeah, it quite well could. Anyway, beside the point. So thinking about that space where I ate something that directly impacted me, that's the one. And I know that there's so many others.
I love that you brought this up because we can take that cheese, for example, and look at that it has a response to your immune system. So maybe an IgG or an IgE immune response. It can have a pro-inflammatory response. It could have inflamed your gut, which inflamed that nerve that goes from your gut to the brain. We can see physiologically so many things happen, but we often forget that our emotional body and our mental body are interconnected, and emotions will affect our physiology and affect our hormones and our chemistry, but our chemistry will also affect our emotions.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And like one of the things that I've learned is like the happy feeling of the happy chemical serotonin, that like 95% of that is produced in your gut biome.
That is fascinating. It's produced in the biome, so I've heard it's produced in the gut, but it's actually produced by the gut biome, meaning it's not produced by ourselves. It's produced by the little aliens living inside our gut.
Yes. I mean, please do not quote me. I am not a doctor. I am a teacher, but I do know that there are definitely white papers out there that I draw on that literally not everyone, but obviously just talking about the significance of the impact of your gut biome is like, if you get that replaced, there has been like example after example of people's personalities completely changing.
For the better.
Yeah, of
Yes.
course. Yeah, well, it's about balance. It's about coming back to homeostasis.
My husband, for many years, thought he was bipolar, and that's the level of depression that he would go through.
Yeah.
The doctors even wanted to put him on medication for it. And when we went on our health journey, we started about just under 10 years ago, we started shopping the perimeter, eating organic, one step at a time, that led us down this path. And about 7 or 8 years ago, we went gluten-free and started taking some supplements, especially mineral supplements. But within that first week of going gluten-free, cutting out some bad foods, there was like a list of 12 bad foods we cut out, included obviously more whole foods, and started taking these supplements. My husband turned to me within days. I mean, it was really fast. And he said to me, and I can remember, he was standing in the kitchen. He looked right at me and he says, "I feel even keel for the first time in my life." Even keel, like his emotions were he was grounded. He wasn't going through sweeping depression, the ups and the downs constantly. He was just even keel. And so he has been even keel since then. And what's really interesting is, and he was, I would say, borderline. He was pre-diabetic back then, and he's never been diabetic, but he was definitely going towards it. And I was at the time healing my diabetes. So I was very conscious of the fact that if I ate a bowl of white rice, I would have an emotional swing. And in fact, one of the naturopaths that trained me says that a lot of people have been misdiagnosed with bipolar when they actually have blood sugar swings.
Yeah.
Because our blood sugar alone, our chemistry, can affect our emotions that much.
Yep, 100%. And that is definitely the main storyline to my experience, is just how impactful my diet is to my emotional life. I'm very, very tapped in, and there's all sorts of things that we can get into around the MMR vaccine, of what I've read about how that impacts specifically males' gut experience, that then obviously directly impacts their emotional experience into adulthood, and even more so with apparently African American males, that there's some really horrifying statistics I don't even want to repeat, that it's just like certain people that are genetically disposed to being affected, like their chemistry is set up a certain way to where it's impacted by their environment, or these things that we're introducing them to, that are just, the things that we've done that have added value, but they have the opportunity to be improved. Is this idea that each and every one of us is a unique bag of science. And we're all completely different. And so it's like, when we look at these things that are like, oh, don't eat gluten, or, oh, don't eat sugar. I mean, there's some generalizations that we could say. Sugar is inflammatory to every human. If you can get that under control, that is a big number one, right? I mean, getting away from processed foods, right? All these other things that are the chemical processes that we have done to, feed ourselves and to stave off starvation for a lot of America from the early 1900s, right? That we have the opportunity to look at new opportunities in how we can make authentic, ridding food deserts, right? Like planting gardens, bringing the soil back to life. And that gets into all sorts of other bigger issues about global warming, but that's beside the point. Just really thinking about these opportunities that we have right now, especially in Western culture, to eat well and to do right by our chemistry that some people don't even know about.
I like that you brought up the research around vaccines. We don't often think that a vaccine could disrupt the gut biome and hurt our digestive health. That's probably also something they don't look at when they're testing the safety or efficacy of a vaccine, or the long-term consequences that it may pose on other systems of the body, because they're just looking at immune, but they're not seeing the long-term effects of your gut biome, right? And they're just looking at maybe the diseases or the illnesses that may come in the short term. You've opened up the box, so Pandora's box is open now. I'm super curious. What did you want to share about the vaccine research you've seen before we move on to more topics?
Yeah, well, I bring it down to this one thing, because again, I'm not a doctor. What I have learned is that it's not necessarily what has been painted to us in this cultural dialogue or debate, whatever you want to look at it, of do you vaccinate or do you not vaccinate? That's not the issue. To me, the issue is really about the way that we vaccinate. Obviously, there's benefit in vaccinating your kids. I mean, just really significant. But the issue that I've heard that has really been sidelined for political things, I don't know, that again, it's just interesting to look at the messaging, is what I have heard is, or learned for myself, that I believe is that the way that they've stacked the vaccines, specifically with the MMR, the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine, that has specific impacts on developmental experiences in mostly boys' bodies, that has this impact of the way that your neurochemicals are produced from your gut biome, which literally are little teeny tiny bacteria that are not you, that are literally living inside of you, that then produce these things that become your experience in these neurochemicals, which is really weird to think about.
That amazing symbiotic relationship is outstanding. I also had a doctor on. He's a specialist in the mitochondria. And get this, our mitochondria is not us. The mitochondria in every cell of our body is sort of like a gut biome. It's a separate entity that it plays a symbiotic relationship with us. And I couldn't even wrap my brain around how amazing that is. The ecosystem inside of us is as delicate and needs as much nurturing as the ecosystem outside of us.
100%.
It's absolutely very, very fascinating. I would like to, and this is definitely something I'll send you more information on, but I would challenge your belief system around that vaccines are healthy. and
Okay.
necessary. Having interviewed some doctors that show that we can boost the immune system and train the immune system without vaccines. But that is definitely a discussion for another day. I interviewed Dr. Scylla Whatcott, who's a PhD in homeoprophylaxis. That's a system of training the immune system using a form of homeopathy, and it's proven effective. Millions of people around the world use it effectively. So that would be my little challenge to the belief that we need vaccines to be healthy.
Yes, thank you for challenging me, Ashley. I really appreciate that, because I think that there's an opportunity for me to share more. Is that when we're in these environments, it's like looking at where we're at as a like the race of humanity existing on this planet. I think oftentimes there's like this stretch of where we're at currently and where we can be,
Yeah.
and how we get from one to the other. And I look at it as like this opportunity for us to learn, because obviously those behaviors are based upon learning the practice of those behaviors. So I definitely don't want to say like, oh, I know all this stuff about vaccines and this is the thing to do. I just think that like right now, that's what we've been doing and it's been helpful. But obviously we have the opportunity to advance into new ways of being. And I know that that's going to be something that shifts. So I don't want to come across as being somebody that says like, after I vaccinate, or I think I was just kind of painting these two sides that have been pitted against each other to kind of make this point to say that there's lots of other options around there. And you bring up a fourth one, not just like, hey, the way that we're vaccinating, but hey, we don't even need to do that. There's another way altogether, which I'm happy to hear. So I'd love to see all
Yeah.
that information, to include that in the things that I teach, which I don't teach really a lot of the medical stuff. Most of the things I look at with the actual medicine is go talk to the experts, because there are some beautiful, wonderful humans, like several of the people you've mentioned that are teaching us things, that are like researching all of these brand new things that we're discovering that are beautiful.
Your mentor that is the expert in epigenetics, what do they
Mm-hmm.
have to say about vaccines?
I have never had that conversation with them,
That would be
honestly.
fascinating. I would, and
Yeah,
I'd love to have them on the show if you could make an introduction.
I will do my best.
Awesome. Very cool.
Of
Yeah, I think
course.
epigenetics is a really fascinating topic. A really good book to read is by Dr. Joel Wallach called Epigenetics. He produced it a few years ago, and it is just, you can't even put the book down. It's an amazing read. But I'm sure the work that your teacher's doing is equally fascinating. This idea that we're not set in stone, that our
Yeah.
body is not set in stone. For example, I have a friend, very, very, very dear friend of mine, was born with ichthyosis, a rare skin condition where most of her body was covered in scales.
Mm.
Incredibly painful. They'd crack, they'd bleed. Her skin would shed giant chunks of it because it was
Wow.
hard. Imagine like gravel, hard skin that would
Wow.
shed and bleed, and it wasn't healthy skin. Her father had it as well, and in
Mm.
fact, most of the pictures in the textbooks are her father because he was widely studied. He was, I believe, like one of 3 cases in all of Canada, and
Wow.
so when I met her, which was in the early 2000s, that's what she looked
Mm.
like, and she was in her late 40s,
Mm-hmm.
or late 40s, early 50s at the time. So she'd had it her whole
Mm-hmm.
life. And then I introduced her to Dr. Wallach, the one that wrote the book. He's one of my mentors, the man that wrote the book, Epigenetics. And he said, this isn't something you have to have. You can reverse it.
Mm.
And
Mm.
she's eaten healthy her whole life, taken supplements her whole life. He gave her the formula. He goes, you need to increase, this level of vitamin E and vitamin A, and you need to
Yeah.
do this, and you need to stop eating this food and start eating this food. And now she has 100% healthy skin. The one, like 100% healthy skin. It was so cool. The
Wow.
only thing I would say is left is dry hands and feet, like dry, like, oh,
Mm.
my
Yeah.
hands are dry, I'm gonna put cream on them, like that's
Yeah.
like dry, like a dry arm, like, oh, my skin is dry, I'm just gonna put some cream on it, like that's
Yeah.
it. And I
Yeah.
watched as it's the first thing I noticed was her hands got better, like I could see the
Yeah.
skin healing. And when we look at it, because all the medical doctors, I mean, her family was studied for this, and every doctor said this is just how it is. You're baked into the cake. This is part of your genes.
Yeah.
And this is the medical doctor versus very experienced naturopath. And a naturopath
Mm.
says, how can we support the body's ability to heal itself? What raw building
Mm.
blocks does the body need? And
Yeah.
she, over time, it took many years. It's been 7, at least, yeah, it's been 7 years that she's been on this
Hmm.
protocol. It took her 7 years, but now she has a completely healthy skin. And the example is that her genetics will express in that manner when nutrients are depleted.
Hmm.
And that
Yeah.
same, if we took the same nutrient deficiencies, now she ate healthy, so it's like
Hmm.
how many people are walking around with nutrient deficiencies? But if you took that
Yeah.
same nutrient deficiency of, let's say, vitamin A and vitamin E, and gave it to you, you might develop asthma. It
Yeah.
might show up in a different part of your body because your genetic weak spots are lungs, for example.
Yep.
And so we can, that's how we can use nutrition to reverse these seemingly impossible things to reverse. And that's why I love about epigenetics, is that nothing's impossible and the body has an
Yeah.
amazing ability to heal. And you love to teach how to heal the body also through looking at the personal growth work of emotional learning as well. So
Yes.
so let's
I
get
was
into
just
that.
thinking about that. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, obviously all these things that we've talked about are wonderful, beautiful things that I've found that are practices around like the body, the genetics of things that are beautiful and a great place to start adding value. But then obviously the belief systems, we could talk about that all day long. Just like the things that you believe aren't just the structure of the belief itself, but the languaging as well. And the thing that I love to teach is the idea of called home frequency, that the emotions that I'm feeling are actually a frequency that I'm putting through my body, through my cells, out into my environment, specifically into the spaces of what I'm holding space for to happen in my life. Case in point, if every day I'm waking up and immediately that alarm goes off and my nervous system is like really like struggling to get out of bed, and then I'm thinking about this job that I hate, that I'm miserable because my boss is mean to me, and I'm kind of just like not really valued in that space, and I get up and I go and I do the same thing every single day and I don't see a way out. But these things are actually vibrations of my belief system that are coursing through my body and out into the things that I'm doing and being and feeling in all of the spaces that I go into. And so I take this from Penny Pierce's Transparency book about the idea of this home frequency. And so one of the things that I teach in my course is diaphragmatic rhythmic breathing. I like to pair it with my meditation practice that I learned from Emily Fletcher at Ziva Online. And basically what it is it's like the closest thing to sleep breathing to be able to get my nervous system reset. Because if I'm in these feelings, which I feel big feelings, and oftentimes they can be really overwhelming, and sometimes it could be depression, other times it could be a real manic experience. Because just like your husband, I was definitely very depressed for a long time, and it would show up publicly because of the way that I was coping with my environment to get the approval from external sources because I wasn't giving it to myself internally, was about showing up and being happy and positive, because that's what people really want, right? They don't want to be around this like call for love that I'm not answering, right? This thing that I have the opportunity to do that I'm putting off on someone else. And so in that space, what I like to talk about is actually looking at the feelings that are showing up in my body rather than not giving them space and saying, oh, I don't have time to be stressed or anxious or depressed or angry, or maybe like I'm like getting really excited about something and I keep focusing on this excitement that's just a carrot on a stick that I never actually get to. I mean, I've experienced all those things. To me, the most significant thing that I 100% learned from Dr. Hamilton was this idea of getting in control of my nervous system. Now, obviously, the diet and all these body things that we were just talking about are a really big benefit that will help this practice to be more effective, but they're independent to one another. That if you're feeling anything, that if you can come into the space of calming your nervous system and quite literally, quote unquote, grounding yourself, is getting your body into alpha waves, which is the same as the Earth's wavelength, that your nervous system comes to a grounded state where, like your husband said, he's even keel, and you have clarity, You oftentimes have the ability to get yourself motivated towards something. And what I like to do in that moment, like once I have this big feeling, big overwhelm, big depression or whatever, I do my breathing and my meditation. And within minutes now, after I've been practicing it for a year, within minutes, it subsides. I feel calm. I feel present. I feel centered and clear. And then I'm able to choose with intention about what I want to do. And I've learned now that in that moment, to go do something I love, to go do something that brings me joy, go draw, go play my ukulele, go walk in the sun, call my little brother and tell him how much I love him, all that stuff, right? That it's actually about the vibration that's literally reinforcing my nervous system, because so much of our lives, even in the last 100 years, right, has been about this sort of like neurotic press, this sort of like gotta do, gotta be, gotta go, gotta complete, gotta compete, gotta, as an entrepreneur, there's like this drive to be relevant or to pivot and, get the deal or like get the new client, all these sorts of things that to me is just an extension of our history of, oh my God, the horde's coming down around the mountain. We better all run, that we've just shifted into a new space. And so now with the robot overlords coming to take over all of our menial tasks, we get the opportunity to really look at the things that are uniquely human, such as feelings. And we get to decide, this is the vibration. Quite literally, what I'm expecting in the next few years is like the calibration of a vibration of saying, hey, I'm feeling shame. And I recognize that this is this calibration. I can move it up to anger. Or, hey, I'm feeling anger. I can move that up to courage, or whatever it might be. This opportunity that we have to literally shift the frequency that is flowing through our bodies. And it's just revolutionizing people's lives, because it doesn't matter what you're dealing with physically. You can have an impact in that space, just like changing your beliefs, right? How I eat is significant. The things that I'm putting into this bag of chemistry make a big difference. And we've obviously talked about that for a while. The way I talk about who I am and how the world works in my own internal dialogue makes a huge difference. So do both of those. But also, we have this opportunity to look at the fact that these things that we are being in the world are a vibration, and that's filling all of the things that are happening around us. And I start talking to people and love coaching people around this idea of the weird application of the law of attraction, which is talking about that very same thing, that like visualizations help, is all about like these sorts of things about putting a vibration into a space that has faith to say that this is what I am going to experience. And I have seen hand over fist time and time again that what shows up into that space is better than I could have imagined.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously I'm passionate about that stuff, so I can go on and on and on and on about that, but it really is a very weird new concept for people to think about. This vibration is actual scientific energy. And we can go look at the fact that, this wave particle problem in physics, that just like all the medical stuff we've been talking about, I'm not an expert in, but I know that this thing is a very real experience about our cells are vibrating. Right? Tesla himself is like, if you want to understand the universe, think in terms of frequency and vibration, right? It's just what everything is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway,
Can you teach
again,
us
I could go on and on and on and on.
Can you teach us the rhythmic breathing?
Yes, I would be honored to. So I like to start with just, again, it pairs really well for me with my meditation, but not necessary, is getting into a comfortable position where my back is supported. I'm seated, and I like to have some sort of grounding. So like if you're in a hammock, it becomes more difficult. If you're, up on some stands up in the air somewhere, it makes a difference, especially in the beginning aspect. So keeping my feet on the ground, whether I'm sitting on the ground or in a chair with my feet on the ground, and my back is supported, head free. I close my eyes, do whatever you want with your hands. There's all sorts of research that shows different benefits and different effects of the different hand postures that I won't go into now. But the simple nature of it is diaphragmatic, which is belly breathing, but very specific belly breathing, because I can move my abs in and out and force my lungs to go breathe in and out. We don't want to do that. We want gentle and relaxed states. And so I want to breathe through my diaphragm. And that is sort of like, for me, the way I experience it is relaxing my belly and allowing that like kind of like Buddha belly to allow my stomach to pooch out. Several things happen with that. It's vulnerable. So you have this opportunity to really be in that moment of being vulnerable and trusting. And so there's like this aspect of what they say with Buddha no mind is this vulnerability of letting go. So as I'm breathing in, I breathe in for 5 and I hold for 1. And then I breathe out for 5 and hold for 1. Breathe in for 5, hold for 1, breathe out for 5, hold for 1. And while I'm doing that, my coaches advised me that specifically to relax my shoulders and my head. And as I've been practicing it this year, just the way that I've become able to get my mind, which I think we're all really caught up in, to start being present with what my body is saying is a huge practice, because I now have the opportunity through my diaphragmatic rhythmic breathing to start listening to my body in a way that I never had before. And so I do that. She says to try to do it for at least 5 minutes. I still have yet to do it for a solid 5 minutes because my mind wanders and I forget the count and all that sort of stuff. But I practice it over 20 minutes. So that way I feel like I get several little 3 to 5 minute peaks in there. So it's really easy, really simple. And yeah.
Very cool.
Thank you. Thank you.
You've said a few times, I'm not an expert, I'm not a doctor, and I get it because you want to make sure that people know that you're not giving medical advice. What
Yes.
do you consider you to be an expert in?
That's a good question. I think that I would consider myself to be an expert in learning, and I think specifically around behavior change. One of the things that I've found that my genius loves to show up in is around community and building specifically communities online. Because again, I look at all of it as a frequency and a vibration. And the way that we can show up and create positive containers that other people can really plug into and have like biological effects of just being involved in a positive group that's really supportive and also very present with dissonant frequencies or things we don't want to experience or upsets that have the opportunity to bring justice to, is that space of togetherness. And so I look at that as like the idea of us learning together.
Very cool.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I know you're a very passionate teacher and that you're constantly learning. So I just
Yeah.
want to make sure that you're given an opportunity to shine in this podcast to help have people learn from you from the area that you find that you're the expert in.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, and so I think that that's like what my coursework is about, is really about how to teach yourself. And I've really tried to break down the things that I've learned from the body practices to the mind practices and into the space that really there's not a whole lot of people talking about, with this idea of like literal scientific human energy practices.
You talked about getting in control of your nervous system so that you can access the alpha brainwaves. Can you teach us some techniques for gaining control of our nervous system?
Yeah, well, number one is the diaphragmatic rhythmic breathing. That to me is like if you're in something that you don't want to feel and you want to get out of it within minutes, again, it's a practice, right? So at the beginning of the practice, it might take longer, but just being able to calm your nervous system down and getting it to that space of being disciplined. Because up until now, I mean, depending on how old we are, even if you're a 15-year-old kid, for 15 years, your nervous system has been doing this thing that it's been trained to do, and that's all it's been experiencing. And so it has this data set of inputs coming through our senses, and then like instantaneous meaning making that is taking those data and making it mean the things that we've previously associated to that. And then the behavior oftentimes goes right with it, i.e., the cucumber and ding dong, right? We're experiencing hunger and we know this nutrient rich thing will definitely satisfy that thing. And so we automatically, without even thinking about it, we get hunger, move over there, grab the donut down the hatch, and we keep moving. And so like really like looking at those spaces of how we can give ourselves space. And so that would be the second one that I would teach, is first diaphragmatic rhythmic breathing is it's the one thing that I stick with. Is one thing people could leave learning from me today is go look up diaphragmatic rhythmic breathing. And I know sometimes people say, well, oh, what about the Wim Hof breathing method or this breathing method? Is they all affect our nervous systems differently. And I've
Mm-hmm.
definitely learned that diaphragmatic rhythmic breathing is the one to go with to get a hold of your nervous system, to get grounded. And the second thing is about space. What I mean with space is giving myself, like your husband said, is coming to that space of being even keel, is not too manic, not too excited, not too what some circles would call a golden charge. Like, oh, I'm in love with that thing. I'm fanboying about that thing. Gotta have it. And more of an appreciation, a gratitude for it. And on the other side of it is, oh, I'm so awful, or this is so horrible, or look at this injustice, or this upset about how I feel about myself, is really coming to the space of like saying, okay, I recognize that I don't want that, and what can I do about it? And so in that idea of space, oftentimes to me is, again, going back to the really simple practice, is about my meditation. So the meditation that I practiced, that I learned from Emily Fletcher, was really about getting present with the moment that's happening right now. And I've found that when we're in these spaces of getting just really locked into an experience, again, whether it's positive, negative, want, don't want, is coming to that space of giving my nervous system space to consider, to be the observer, to say, what is it that I really want? That's a tough question to answer sometimes. And so what I've come to this practice of doing is really about giving myself as much space as I need until it becomes clear for me to take an aligned action. And then I just do it. And it's like an experiment. It's like an adventure now, to where I get through the fear to do something new or to try something different and see the possibilities of, hey, if this works out, then great, this is the solution. And if not, I get to learn, rather than, oh, it might fail, because that's our default measure, especially in, Western culture, when we have been like really reinforced through all of our cultural norms and all of our entertainment about like being afraid of all of these new different choices, right? So yeah, that's where I start with those two things, is just keeping it really simple.
So, if to follow your example, if someone has fear, let's say they're afraid of changing their diet, or
Uh-huh.
going with a new, like, let's say they learn about, in I Thrive, they talk about whole food plant-based diet,
Mm-hmm.
and the listener is been doing paleo or keto, and they're
Yeah.
like, I'm afraid, I don't, it's, and what comes up for them, they're interested,
Yeah.
but a lot of fear comes up, especially around making health changes, because, it could get worse, right? Or
Yeah. Yeah.
what is my husband going to say? What's my kids going to say? How am I going to do this? I don't know how to cook. Like, all these excuses, and like
Mm-hmm.
what feels like very, real, excuses come up. I don't have enough time. I don't have money. Everything comes
Mm-hmm.
up, all the self talk, and, I can't do this. I failed before. And just like all of a sudden, this mountain of self talk, and we're feeling anxiety or overwhelm or fear around making and choosing to do something new,
Mm-hmm.
because it's the unknown, right? It's this unknown. I don't know how to cook that way. I don't know how to eat that way. I don't, and then the past comes up, right?
Mm-hmm.
All the baggage from our past comes up to
Yep.
convince us not to go do it. And I get it that at one point this might have been a survival mechanism, because the unknown is potentially dangerous, and the known, no matter how chronically bad it is at least safe, and that we can know what to expect in the
Yeah.
known.
Yeah.
So how what could someone do if they were in that position where they had anxiety, fear, or overwhelm about making new choices in their life, or creating a new routine in their life?
Yeah, that's great. I think the thing that always comes up to me is how, when we think about these things, we think about this experience of making a change. And we think about it as this one experience, and I have to change this one experience, because if I don't, all these other like things, like you said, all these things come up about what's going to happen. I break it down to like some really simple opportunities to add value. Is one, come into observation of it. To me, that's the beginning of all change. If you have the opportunity to make a change, is notice when you're in that space. Because oftentimes when we're thinking about making those changes, we're not in the middle of it. we're after the fact, where we're shaming ourselves or guilting ourselves, thinking about all these other things, or we're having to take responsibility for some, we're sitting in the doctor's office and he's giving us this news about our situation, and we're like in this denial or guilt or shame or whatever that emotion is to like really break it down to say like, okay, this is the moment where I know that I want to eat that thing or I want to believe that thing, and give it gratitude. That's sometimes very antithetical to people, to think about, wait a minute, I'm feeling this shame, I'm feeling this depression, and you want me to be grateful for it? And I say, absolutely. Because if I feel depression, it's a vibration that's in my body. And it's a vibration that has a genesis. And if we look at it, every single one of them, and I know some people push back on me, all of it is something that we have chosen in our past that's been brought to now, and it's looking for something. It's looking for a completion that I say is a vibration. And gratitude oftentimes is that vibration it's looking for. It's a call for love is another way to look at it. That this thing that's inside my body, this feeling or this vibration that's coming through me, is if I sit with it and I just give it gratitude, and I literally say out loud to myself when I'm weeping and I just am done with it, as I sit up and I allow myself to feel it, and I say thank you, and I don't resist it. I give myself time. I literally go put myself in my closet and in a space that I feel like I can give myself that gratitude, because obviously with depression, I want to crawl under my covers and just disappear. So I don't hide from it. I get present with it. And oftentimes it can be overwhelming. So what I say is just observe it and give it gratitude. If that's for a second, great. Next time, let it be 2 seconds. But give it as much gratitude as you can, because in that space, you now start seeing that after a while, you have a little bit more space to be able to shift that vibration. And then obviously there's the diaphragmatic rhythmic breathing, which if you can't do it, go to diaphragmatic rhythmic breathing. That breathing practice will just clear up all these sorts of things. And then when you get to that gratitude space, it gives you to the space of like recognizing that this is something that I have the opportunity to do something about, right? Do something differently. And when you're in that space, you can start listening to yourself, which is the second thing that I look at is, okay, now I'm in observation. I recognize I'm feeling depression. And then I have the opportunity to recognize that there's associated language that's just flowing as if somebody's like on a loudspeaker telling me these things that are oftentimes these really horrible things about myself or the world around me. And so like taking into stock, again, no judgment, but just taking into observation of like, man, when I feel depressed, I hear myself, like you said earlier, I hear myself telling myself that I don't matter, or I'm not good enough, or I'll never be able to do it, or all these beliefs that are like, if you heard someone else saying that to your kid, you'd have some very stern words to say to those people,
I'd knock
right?
their teeth out.
Yes. I mean, I didn't want to get all about it, but yeah, I'd punch some fools in the mouth. For sure. If you didn't talk to my kid like that, I'm going to be in your face. Absolutely. And so in that space, but it's funny how we don't advocate for ourselves. Again, historical, sociological, and there's reason behind it, right? There's history behind those sorts of things about tribalism and how we needed to co-create and to survive and all those sorts of things that are not for right now. But looking at that space of one, coming into observation of the feeling, which is a vibration, give it gratitude, and then start looking at the automatic language, which is the belief about yourself. And the wording is specific. And you can, if you want, get into all of the past about the story of the derivation of those beliefs, or you can just recognize it and say, I don't want to tell myself that about myself or my environment anymore. Instead, I want to believe this. And you, in that moment, is what I advocate for. You literally change the language. And that practice right there of catching my own self-talk and out loud, I change it. And one of the famous ones one of the more common ones that we hear in our society, or at least in the circles that I travel around, is when people say the word should. For example, like, oh, you shouldn't eat that, or, oh, you really should go work out, or, oh, you know what, you should drink more water, or, hey, you should go to the doctor. It's like, those are all projections of expectation. And should has a place, right? It's the application of wisdom, right? If you want this outcome, well, there's wisdom that'll speak to the best way that you can do it to have optimal, effective outcomes, right? So there are dependencies where should works. But when in projections, especially in beliefs and language that we have programmed in our neocortex, that is a trigger based on the vibration and the feeling that comes up from our bodies, we have the opportunity to reprogram those things. And again, it's not about saying like, oh, if you're Christian, you now got to go be Buddhist. I'm not saying that. We're not talking about like whole systems. But what I'm talking about is like literally the feeling of the words that we use to talk about ourselves and our environment. And then going to that space after the gratitude, after looking at the language, and then you get into the space of having the opportunity to program joy into yourself, is looking towards what do I want? And man, that has been one of the most difficult things I've ever had to ask, is like, what do I authentically want? Like in this moment, what do I want right now? Okay, I'm grateful for this depression that has shown up in my life and my body. It's an opportunity for me to love myself. I give it gratitude and it's subsiding. And I hear myself telling myself that I don't matter and that's silly. I do make a difference in the world, and I tell myself that. And so now, what do I want? And it's like, oh, I want to show up and be happy and excited and do improv on stage for people and teach them these sorts of things. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to go do that. And I have found unequivocally that I've absolutely reversed my life with those simple practices right there.
Now I want to break this down because
Sure.
you went really fast, and I'm not sure that everyone got each step. So I definitely want to go back because I don't want to glaze over this. This is really important. In episode 320, something I published recently with an expert on emotional eating and binge eating. She's a certified registered dietitian, but specifically around eating disorders. And she taught something that all of us can use, and it's something that actually you just taught. So I think I want to acknowledge that she says that when we observe, we slow down to the point where we start to hear the self-talk. Because oftentimes I think we walk around hearing the self-talk as though it's actually us. So like, like, why did you eat that? You're so stupid. You're so like, whatever the self-talk is. So for me, let's say I'll use my example of having like a craving last night. And in the past, I would start saying really negative things to myself. Like, what are you can't eat healthy. What are you doing? Or whatever. Like I'd say much meaner things. I'm not gonna, I'm not thinking of them right now.
Yes.
What she would say is you listen to the self-talk, that thought that popped in your head, that negative thought that popped in your head. And you say something like, so let's say I thought to myself, I'm so stupid. Like, let's say I heard myself like in my head, that's my self-talk. I say, I hear myself saying, I'm so stupid. So you become the observer, and you say it like, I'm saying this. Or if you hear the decision, like, I feel so full from eating pudding that I'll never be able to lose weight again, and I'll always be fat and miserable. So let's say that was the self-talk, right? So then you stop and you say, I hear myself saying that I will always be sick and miserable. I hear myself saying that. And so you become the observer, you step outside of it, and you acknowledge it's a separate voice from you, and you're not giving it any more power over you. So, because you're separating yourself from it. So, because this can work if you're having argument with your spouse, and you can just take yourself out of it, and you look at yourself and you go, I hear myself saying this belief. I hear myself saying, because he slammed the door, that means I'm not loved. And so you catch yourself and you slow things down enough. And you start realizing, well, that's silly. Like, is that, and then you start questioning, like, is that true? Is that true? Because I overeat this one meal, I'm always going to be sick and miserable. Is that really true? But we beat ourselves up and live like this voice in our head is the truth.
Yeah.
And you're saying that then what happens is when we let that take over, that the words that our the self-talk has, the negative self-talk that we give to ourselves, creates a frequency that creates that depression in every cell of our body, that bathes our body in the negative belief. The negative belief has
Yeah.
a vibration along with the words. So
Yeah.
I'm stupid, I'm not
Yeah.
loved, I'm always, I will always be this, I'll always be broke, or I'll always be alone, or I'll always, like, whatever these really negative things I'm saying have different frequencies. And if we let it kind of run through our mind and we live like it's the truth, then we're
Mm-hmm.
bathing our body in this frequency. This reminds me of, I believe his name was Yamamoto. I'm probably saying it wrong, but it was the man in Japan who would take water and say prayers to it and freeze
Oh
it,
yeah. Yeah. The
versus
structures of those
the structures
snowflakes and
of
stuff.
water. And yeah, and then
Yeah.
he would take
Yes.
water and say, I hate you, and freeze it.
Yes. There's a rice one. If you look up I'm sure you've seen it, where they have 3 bowls of rice and they
Mm-hmm.
ignore one bowl. They talk nice to another bowl and they're mean to another bowl. And the one that talks nice still looks like great rice in 2 weeks, but the other two turn crazy colors.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen
Same
that.
thing.
Yeah, with plants and
Yeah.
but
Yes.
with water, it was really interesting to see that and they have these beautiful pictures of with water, what happens to water when you give it different frequencies. And because
Yeah.
most of our body, it's like 70% of our body is made up of water. Sometimes,
Yep.
depending on how old we are, or how light or heavy our body is, it could be less or more water. But basically, we are made up of so much water. And he's like, look, if you can say I hate you and freeze some water, and you can see that a frequency was held in that water, and it's
Mm-hmm.
scientifically proven, and then you say I love you, and consistently, you could consistently
Mm-hmm.
say I love you to
Mm-hmm.
water and consistently get the same structure, so the same frequency over and
Mm-hmm.
over and over again. I mean, that was one, you said a few words to water, and it held the
Yeah.
vibration. Imagine what is happening in our body, to every cell in our body.
Absolutely. I 100%, and we could dig through all that for the longest time. I don't want to belabor the point, but one of the practices that I love to share with people is, because vagal nerve tone is what we're talking about, is the emotion that goes from what we're receiving, producing from the gut or the body, or all of our different, bag of water that's picking up on the vibrations in our environment, sending up that vagus nerve to the base brain, which is the area for compassion. It also goes from the brain down to the body. So that way, when we get butterflies in our stomach, when we're observing something and we're thinking about forecasting anxious situations, that, maybe talking on stage, or approaching a boss for a raise, or talking to a spouse or significant a partner about something that they know they won't really receive well, all of those things can come from top down to bottom. And so what I talk to people about is smile until you're happy. And it feels so weird, because it's like you're choosing a behavior that is antithetical to the way that your body feels, but it shifts your body. Your
Mm-hmm.
body will listen to your decision that you're making. As my base starts making these motions that my muscles are like tied to an emotion and a frequency, then my body starts following along with it. So it's like this whole thing that's like, it's not difficult. It just feels a little bit weird.
That fake it till you make it saying, right? It's like, if you're
In a
feeling
sense,
bad,
yeah.
turn on some good music and have a
Yes.
dance party in your living room for
Yep.
3 minutes while you're smiling and pumping your
Yep.
arms in the air.
Yeah.
You will definitely feel a shift.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Dance is,
there's
yeah.
right.
Yes.
Changing your physiology will change your mood, which will change the outlook on your circumstances.
Yeah. And two, to remember that it's like, we're not just one thing, us wild, wacky humans. We're lots of things all at the same time. So it's like, do what works. Try something different, something that lights you up, that you're excited about. If shaking your booty in the kitchen while you're making those eggs for breakfast is the thing you can do, girl, do that. If you feel like all you can do is just smile on the train, on the subway, on the way to work, do that. Whatever works to add value. That's what I love talking about to people with this idea of the background that I bring, is of learning, is There's no expectations. You're the only one that can judge the authenticity of your internal experience. No one else can, right? They can judge the things that you're showing up as, right? They can judge the vibrations if they're tuned into that empathically to be able to hear and feel or see whatever their, preferred method of labeling that sixth sense is, that vibration of what you're showing up as. But as far as authenticity of coming into being in integrity with what you really do want, you're the one that's up that gets to look at that.
Can you break down the steps again so we make sure that we get it? So let's say we have let's say sometime today our listeners are going to come up against something. Might be
Yeah.
big, but let's say it's small. Let's say it's just something small so that they can practice this. I want them to do each
Yeah.
step. So let's say they are feeling crappy about the traffic. So I'm
Yeah.
just something comes up, all the listeners, it's going to be different for everyone, but like something small and kind of like just makes us be not in a great mood. So
Great.
we're a little bit curmudgeon-y, we're a little bit upset or frustrated or angry, but I mean, it's not one of those like, because I brought up a really big example, like I'm changing my entire lifestyle and diet, making my entire family go vegan. Like that's like a big,
Yeah.
but like little
Yeah.
examples. So frustrated with traffic or frustrated with our
Yes.
boss or frustrated with our parents or frustrated with our kids. So some kind of level of not 100% happy, sort of, 50-50 on the happiness scale. Something comes up today for everyone. Let's practice your steps. So walk us through
Great.
each step slowly so we can remember what to do.
Of course. I love the example of traffic. I'm an Angelino, so I know what real traffic is, growing up in LA. And so here's what I'm going to say is like, obviously, before you start driving, you left work, you left wherever you're going, maybe you're going to work, you're sitting in the car. Give yourself a few minutes. You're worth it. Make the time. And in that space, you're feeling this angst about, again, this is the thing is like we're getting in the car and you're like, oh, I'm about to hit 5 o'clock traffic, or oh, I'm leaving a little bit late. I'm going to hit that traffic, right? That's that vibration that you feel, that like irritation. Is it in that space? Don't resist the irritation. Don't make yourself get busy, because this is a space where we start getting automatic. Is give yourself a few minutes, and in that space, allow yourself to feel that irritation. Give that irritation gratitude. Actually say to yourself, which might be weird, hopefully you're in the car by yourself before you go pick up other carpoolers, is you say to yourself, thank you, welcome, I appreciate you, thank you, welcome, and sending it gratitude, like authentic gratitude, which
How?
can start. I'm sorry?
How? I mean,
How?
like how, maybe just break it down a little bit. Like how, so
Sure.
I'm frustrated. Let's say I'm frustrated right now.
Yeah.
How do I be grateful for that?
So yeah, it's the actual choice of gratitude doesn't have to be the vibration of gratitude. I can choose to say thank you, welcome, and you'll start seeing, just like the smile until you're happy or dance until you feel good, that you can choose to dance while you're not feeling good, and then you start feeling good.
Okay.
That choice to no longer resist the irritation, but to welcome it, is an actual choice that you're making, that time to sit in the car and to allow that feeling to be there, instead of resist, push down, not going to look at it, got to keep going. That is a choice. So you might not actually, you might still feel that irritant, you might still feel that frustration, and that's okay. And that's the beauty of the gratitude, is to say, like, this feeling is okay. I'm grateful for it, because this is my opportunity to love myself. This is my opportunity to give this actual biological vibration. The thing that it's looking for is completion. It doesn't want to be put back in the box. It's being brought up for us to feel it. And in that moment, we have the opportunity to either resist it, push it down, and be flipping people off in traffic and honking horns and cutting people off and irritating even more yourself and others on the way to wherever you're going. Or you can give yourself that moment to say, like, I'm going to slow down and I'm going to let myself feel this, even if it's just for a minute, where I can give myself, I could just, if it doesn't shift, that's okay, but just allowing it to be there. Oftentimes, just giving it that gratitude and welcoming it and saying, this is okay, will bring up some things. And again, like you said, with the small things, it shifts. It literally comes to completion and will subside. Now, obviously, the bigger the emotion, the more vibration to it and the more like actual memory or language association that will come with it. So picking a small one is a great place to start practicing. And we all have different ones. Some people, maybe traffic is like a really huge one that sends them off the edge. So when you're picking something, whatever you're picking, make sure you have the time and space to be safe and to have this like privacy that you're going to need. And you start giving it that gratitude is literally about it. Like, thank you for teaching me what I have the opportunity to learn here. And that's really like this background that I love to bring, is to help people see that those feelings that we don't want to feel are an opportunity for us to learn, is to recapture the vibration or the actual human energy that's going to these feelings that are dissonant frequencies or emotions that we don't want to feel. And as we give them that gratitude and hear what they have to say, they teach us. They teach us through lots of different ways. Maybe it's, hey, I need to go talk to my parents about this thing that they've been doing, or this friend that's been doing, or I need to go take responsibility for something that I've been out of integrity with, or it gives us action. Or like we said, which is the next step, is it starts helping us see the way that we're talking about ourselves and our environment. And so you get to learn about how you were overly limiting yourself before. And that pain, that irritation, that suffering, the depression, the anxiety, the stress, all those negative feelings that we don't want to feel are that call that's saying, hey, I want your attention because I want to teach you what was there that is no longer serving you. It's an opportunity for learning and
Mm.
growth, you see?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I'm giving it that gratitude, I'm honoring it rather than resisting it and putting it back in the cage and not looking at it and shoving, because that's what we do. We have this tendency to be like, nope, I got to keep going, got to keep going. I got this thing I got to do. I'm projecting all of these expectations and shoulds out into my environment where I don't give myself the opportunity to feel those feelings. And so if I do, I get into that space of gratitude and I give that emotion, that literal biological vibration, the space and the honor to say, teach me. Because I was telling myself, or I have a memory or some belief about this traffic that is creating a vibration that is historical, right? I know that I'm going to be frustrated with these things. Well, once you give it that vibration, I can now program myself to think about it differently. And I love this example because for me, one of the ways that I shifted my thoughts and feelings about traffic was, instead of like, I got to sit through this traffic, it's going to be an extra 20 minutes. Instead, so give it that vibration, the gratitude, and then I get to look at that language. Oh God, it's going to be this thing. Well, I look at it now as like, oh, I get to have an even longer dance party in my car now. So I shift it in that moment. I go towards what I'm excited about in that situation. And this kind of comes towards this practice of like being present. Is you're not going to be able to change traffic. I mean, obviously you can anticipate and maybe leave a little bit earlier or later future. And, that's the learning opportunity we have with patterns that are in our environment. But we're not always going to be able to avoid traffic. And so when I do hit that frustration, I give it gratitude. I then reprogram it and get myself to the point where I get to see the good in it. I can find silver lining in everything.
So with the gratitude, what I like
Mm-hmm.
about that is that you go from resisting to choosing,
Yeah.
to saying I choose this frustration instead of resisting it, because like you said, what we normally do is try to numb it, try to push it
Yeah.
away. And this is a lot of times where we end up with addictive behaviors where
Mm-hmm.
we will drink, smoke, eat copious amounts of sugar,
Mm-hmm.
dairy. There's lots of
Mm-hmm.
foods and beverages that are legal, that will mm, override and try to numb and crowd out those negative emotions.
Yep.
But with our own chemistry, right? We're shifting our chemistry with Red Bull and energy drinks and sugar,
Mm-hmm.
so that we temporarily are not feeling those feelings that are uncomfortable,
Yeah.
or we might go to heavier drugs.
Yeah. And the funny thing actually is that doesn't, those things that cover over it, they don't actually address the vibration of the feeling itself. And what happens is when we cage it up and we lock it away, it gets into ourselves even more. We're bathing ourselves. We're putting it back in. We're leaving the tumor in our bodies, and it continues to grow and continues to affect us. And every single time it gets stronger. And those actual neural synapses in our gut brain, in our heart math institution, gut brain, all that, not gut brain, heart, the brain, heart, whatever that neural network is, that can't think of right now, up into our actual brain and our neocortex, our electric like pathways that are being formed. And so when we give ourselves that space, we give ourselves the opportunity to create new neural pathways.
Yes, because we're choosing a new behavior
Yeah.
instead of that old behavior. And it could be like, it doesn't have to be also an external food, like food or drug, to change our chemistry. Sometimes we're using, for example, surfing Instagram or Facebook, or watching
Yeah.
TV, or
Yep.
sometimes even listening to music, in order to numb out, right? Using some kind of stimulus to numb out, or to push down,
Yep.
or to push aside. So just using this as an example, we've got the frustration of traffic, or we might just sit there kind of just being frustrated and listening to music, or talking to someone on our Bluetooth. But not allowing ourselves to fully experience it and learn from it. We're kind of
Yeah.
just it's taking over our body and
Yep.
affecting our body, but we're resisting. So there's a resistance. We're
Yeah.
pushing back.
Yeah.
And I remember back when you've probably heard of the landmark education.
Yes.
So yeah, so there was one of these examples in the forum. So it's a personal growth and development class where someone's standing there and pushing on a brick wall, and with physics, the brick wall is pushing back at you with as much force as you push on it.
Mm-hmm.
So if I push 100 pounds with my hands, the brick wall is pushing 100 pounds back at me, because I'm not moving that brick wall, right? And that's kind of like when we resist the emotions instead of choose them. When I'm resisting frustration by numbing it out, or by getting busy, like you said. We get busy instead of feeling, and because sometimes we're so afraid of feeling, because we don't know what's going to happen. Like, is this like dark hole, this black hole of just, we're just gonna, like, is everything going to come out? But what you're saying is that when we address it with gratitude, and we don't have to feel the gratitude, we just say something like, "Thank you, frustration. I welcome you. Thank you. I'm looking forward to learning from you. Thank you for being here." That's all. So it takes, what, 10 seconds? And then this next step is we see the good in it, and we look to move towards what we're excited about.
Yeah, well, the second step is looking at associated language.
Okay, good. So explain
which
step
is like
two.
oftentimes it feels like they're on top of each other, just because of the way that our bodies work. Feeling, vibration, automatically lightning brings up association in our neocortex, past experience, right? Fight or flight mechanisms. So in that space of just giving yourself space, of giving gratitude, oftentimes you come to like amazing realizations where you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I've been telling myself that this whole time, that you didn't even see it before. I know just a few weeks ago that happened to me, where I was doing something where I was trying to park my car and I went too forward and I like bumped the fence or something. And out loud I said, "Yeah, you idiot." And I was like, whoa, what was that? Where did that come from? It's like being able to, like you said earlier, giving yourself that space to recognize that vibration immediately triggered this language. And so looking at that in that space then gives us that opportunity to reprogram the languaging and also the choice right there, which, again, actually, remember, these things as our human experience that we're used to having are all stacked as one experience that we look at and we say, I got to change this. I got to stop doing this. I gotta, all these expectations that, unless you can unpack it, it becomes very difficult to go through all these steps.
So gratitude and then associated language. So when you say associated language, what we're doing is listening. So let's say I have the frustration of the traffic. I say, thank you, frustration. I'm going to learn from you today. You're welcome here. And then I stop and I go, and now I'm listening to my inner thoughts about my frustration with traffic, and listening to like, or asking what kind of questions, like if I'm new to this, if all of us are new to this, these steps, what question should we ask ourselves to become present to the language so we can do this step?
Thank you so much for clarifying. So there isn't really a question as much as there is going into the position of being the observer. And like I said, when the vibration, when that feeling comes up, when the frustration of grabbing the keys and noticing the time and you're walking out to the car, that thing that you're feeling automatically, like in lightning microseconds, brings up a belief, something you're saying to yourself in that same moment. So that gratitude is the first step. And then looking at the thing that came up as the language of like, oh, I noticed myself saying like, oh crap, here comes, the traffic or whatever. And looking at that space of like saying like, oh my goodness, instead of like, I'm upset about the traffic, I can say I get to look at that. So again, it's like microseconds of difference because we're talking about electrical signals in the body.
Right.
And so like the vibration that triggers the association is almost instantaneous. And so like giving yourself this practice, and if this is the first time you've done it, oftentimes it's not until after it's all settled and done where you're like, oh man, that's what Jeremy and Ashley were talking about, And then the next time it comes up, maybe you'll just say like, okay, I just want to give it gratitude, but you don't remember exactly what you were saying, and that's okay. And so as you keep practicing it, it starts becoming easier and things literally start slowing down, and your ability to shift yourself from choice or language of belief into action, into, hey, I want to sit and observe this and hear what it has to say. It takes a long time to get into that practice. Like I said, I've been doing this for years, and sometimes it goes by where I don't catch myself. I'm getting better about it, but again, it's a practice.
So to come at it with the attitude of anytime we experience a negative emotion, we welcome it and come at it with the attitude, I'm going to become the observer, and there's something for me to learn here, and there's something for me to see a new opportunity in. So
Yes.
even so, it could be like getting fired from a job might obviously be like the worst thing in the world, or like they don't have enough money to pay a bill. Seems like our old way of being would be to be upset about it, to not see a way out, to cry, to be angry, to lash out, to numb ourselves, to beg, to all these sort of old patterns might come up. And the new way to be is to sit for a minute, do some deep breathing, be present to the emotion, be grateful for it, and be grateful for the opportunity to find new learnings in it, and find a new thing we can learn about ourselves and about life. And so by shifting our consciousness around it, we'll start to see new possibilities show up. And maybe we'll start to see how to solve the situation in a new way, because we're shifting shifting everything. What you're also doing is you're taking them out of the sympathetic nervous system response of fight or flight. So once you do that, you're now gaining access to your frontal cortex again. Because when we go into these negative emotions like frustration around traffic, we are triggering the sympathetic nervous system response of fight or flight, and we're which shunts blood away from logic centers of the brain, so we don't have full access to problem solving.
Yeah, and you said it so beautifully, and I would add one thing, that instead of sitting down and having what you said was deep breathing, obviously I would advocate for diaphragmatic rhythmic breathing.
Yes, diaphragmatic rhythmic breathing.
Yep.
Wonderful. Yeah, so that's 5 seconds in with your belly doing the relax your belly. 5 seconds in, pause. 5 seconds out, pause. 5 seconds
hold for
in.
one. Okay. And actually what it is it's the closest thing to sleep breathing. You get your body into that space of allowing your nervous system to relax. So that's why it's important to recognize where the tension is and just continue to relax it. And obviously the meditative aspect of that is focusing on the breathing, and the counting of the breathing is giving your brain something to stay focused on.
Now, this entire process takes seconds, and once you get good at it, it can definitely take less than a minute. I know we're taking a long time sort of unpacking it and explaining it, because there's many steps, but once someone does it and walks through it, they'll get so good at it that it doesn't take that long, but it allows us to, instead of resisting, to move through, to learn, to grow.
Yeah.
A lot of people think we can't grow, that we're stuck the same way.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have a belief about men that men don't change and grow. So I like that you're here showing us that, you have done so much change work in the last 10 years. Do
Yeah.
people, like family members have known your whole life? Do they have a problem recognizing you?
That's a good question. I have the sense there's story all around that. I don't spend a lot of time with my family. That's part of the issue. It's difficult to answer that question because I don't see them very regularly. But I think when you look at this idea of like people that did see me regularly and now experiencing me, they absolutely do not recognize me. I mean, I have absolutely not just changed my physiology. I didn't just lose 100 pounds. I've changed my psychology. The way that I orient my showing up in the world is 100% different. I mean, I'm still the same fun-loving, outgoing, energetic guy, but the vibration has less of a hook buried in it now. I'm not doing
Mm.
it to get something out of you. I'm not trying to get your approval. I'm doing it because I love to have fun and I love to laugh and be goofy and silly because I can, right? I've set up the wise child as one of my archetypes to be playful with the wisdom that I have rather than being staunch and stoic and stuck in my ways, as being flexible and, really just being open to what life has to offer. And I think that's one of the things that you said that I really loved is as you're shifting, so you get into that space, you give that vibration the gratitude that it's looking for, and you see the associated language, you have the opportunity to reprogram it. And I have been in this practice this last year of holding as much space as I possibly can before I make a decision. And I have seen, Ashley, hand over fist, how many times the things that show up and show themselves to me are so much more amazing than I think I would have picked if I just went, oh, and this is what I want, or this is what I'm going to do, which is great if you're just in the beginning of the practice. But for those people that have maybe they're long-term meditators, or they've got their breathing practice down, or they've really worked through all of their biology and they're really like looking at human biohacking and human potential and optimization, is that these spaces of giving yourself space to see what wants to show up in the world is beautiful. And I'm coming to the space of experiencing how just my vibration that I have in my practice, in my morning rituals, it almost writes the story of the day, that I'm like excited to
Mm-hmm.
see what shows up because it's almost always better than I imagined.
Okay, I got now I have some more questions. I want you to teach
Okay.
us how to hold the space, and I
Yeah.
also would love to learn more about what you do for your morning rituals. So which one do you want to talk
Mm.
about first?
I want to talk about space holding because that's definitely one of the big ones that I talk, and it's a little bit more advanced because it sometimes can be pretty frustrating when you're first practicing it. When I say space holding, it's quite literally about once you get yourself to that even vagal nerve tone where you've gotten yourself into the space of not feeling super excited and not feeling super down, right? I'm in the space of just being in this
Calm?
present moment. I have nothing that's really drawing me towards anything that I have to do, and I'm not really drawn towards anything that I really want to do, right? I'm in an even space and sitting there as long as I possibly can. And I'm finding that in those moments that I can apply that tool during the day. Like I'm walking down or I'm, in the aisle at the grocery store and someone in front of me turns around and says something really mean to me or to someone else. And I sit there and I just give it space and I'm observing them. It's funny how many times they almost correct themselves before I say anything. And then when I sit there and see, like, hey, so what I hear you saying is that you think that person's a jerk for bumping into you? Like, oh, well, wait a minute. No, I didn't mean to say that. Or, the opposite. Or like seeing where somebody's doing something really kind. And I was like sitting there observing it. And they're like, oh, is everything okay? Oh, I just was giving myself the moment to just appreciate you being kind to that person. It's just amazing how much power that has in our world to give ourselves space for what's possible.
So is it like becoming the observer, or is it like slowing down our reaction? So I can imagine so many ways I would have reacted in
Mm,
those moments,
mm.
but I wouldn't have been present to them. I would have been busy reacting.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. It is literally getting your nervous system to being in the practice of being the observer. And there's so much power in it. And one of the things that I definitely learned through my 12 and a half years of teaching middle school is just observing the behavior of students. They self-correct, especially in groups, because everyone knows what the expectations of the environments are of, these things. Hey, it's really mean to do that, or it's really good to do that. And just being in that space of observing self and others is a powerful tool when you actually vibrationally in your feeling, in the way that you're being present in that moment, are just observing. It's powerful.
I love it. You reminded me that my 3-year-old says, I just look at him if he's, just like you said, becoming the observer instead of immediately jumping down his throat, and
Yeah.
he'll look at me and he'll self-correct and go, "I'm going to make good choices now. I'm making good choices now." I'm like, "Okay,
Yep.
good."
Yep. Yeah. And one of the things that has been really helpful for me in giving myself space is, you said it earlier, is like actually calling out, oh, I just said that to myself. I said this, or I am feeling this, or with somebody in an external environment looking like, oh my goodness, I just noticed that you were letting that other person go. That was really kind. I just observed you doing that. That it stretches out that moment for that thing that otherwise would have been gone in a heartbeat.
Hmm. So we're acknowledging the positive, we're giving it a bit more time to be with it. And then
Yeah.
for the things that would have been a negative experience, it's not like we're just letting it's not that we're not enforcing boundaries. If someone were to
Hmm.
do something negative, it's that we're just becoming the observer of the situation and observing our thoughts about it, our feelings about it, before we just, instead of just immediately reacting and jumping down that person's throat.
Yeah. And what I like to advocate, again, more advanced tactics when you really get into it, is when you're experiencing something that you're like, hey, I don't agree with that. Like, this person said something rude to that person. I take the position of seeking understanding, because oftentimes those negative choices are from, well, not oftentimes, it's every time, is that person is having a neural experience. Their nervous system is having this thing where they're not catching what they're doing and they're just reacting, and there's an actual impetus for that. And so if I'm in this position, I say to myself, hey, I noticed that you're upset with this person. Instead of pointing out what they did, is being like, hey, I get that you're having an experience and I'd like to understand what's going on. And how can I help you be kind to this person? Because what I experienced was your frustration towards this person. And, obviously, depending on how involved you want to get into that situation, like with your kid, obviously, I was like, something I practice with my kids is like, hey, I noticed, older son, that you're being kind of a bully to your little brother. And I know that he was irritating you because he did this thing where he was like, not listening to what you said. And you have the opportunity to choose how you respond to that situation. So I'm just curious, son, what's going on in your world, and how can I support you to be kind when others are not showing that? Because that's your choice, young man.
Nice. And what does he say to
Yeah.
that?
Oh, oftentimes they just they don't want to get dad going. That's the reality of it. Yeah. But I know they're listening, and just, I think, to me,
Mm-hmm.
is like catching them in that moment of saying, like, one, I validate your emotion. It's okay to feel the way that you're feeling. There's no bad emotion. There's nothing that I ever want to make wrong. That it's okay to feel angry, frustrated, whatever you're feeling. And you don't have to choose to perpetuate that choice of being rude or mean or whatever, this dissonant experience. That you can create a different experience, even if it's just, hey, I experience frustration because what I see you doing is this. And so it's like getting them into that practice of validating their own emotions and getting into the space of seeking understanding of the other in that environment, and really trying to understand and communicate that I don't want that experience.
So is part of your technique to validate your own emotions? Like when you welcome the emotion you're having, show gratitude for the emotion you're having, these steps, that's also feeling like self validation as well.
100%. My friend from LA says that there is love and there is the call for love. And where would love be if not for the call for it?
Can you explain that?
So I was looking at dissonant emotions, these things that we don't want to feel, as an opportunity for love, right? So, like, if I'm feeling depressed, I have the opportunity to give myself the vibration of nurturing, to give myself the vibration of validation. And so if I'm facing that actual vibration, is telling my body and my human experience, it's okay to feel that way. I'm not going to resist you. I'm going to welcome you. You tell me, teach me what I have to learn here. And I get to that space, and then I'm able to program in the thing that I really want, which to me is the love. And so that the whole practice to me is really love. And when I'm able to do that for myself, I expand my capacity to do that for others.
Got it. That's so awesome. Now, you do these morning rituals. Are these private, or can you tell us about them?
Oh, I'm happy to tell you as much as you listen to me. I love talking. Obviously, I've just been going and going. So yeah, every morning I wake up, I have like, how do I want to say this? I plan with blocks, and I allow myself as much choice as I want in my morning rituals. So there's very common ones that are pretty non-negotiable. Wherever I am in the world, my diaphragmatic rhythmic and my which I pair with my meditation, is a must-have. I've been doing it for over 2 years now. It is, I don't care where, you can't take me unless my body is no longer surviving on this planet. I will be here and I will be doing those things. The second piece I do is a lot of different aspects of journaling. I like to practice one of two. Is one just gratitude journaling, or I do morning pages, which I got from the Artist's Way.
Yes.
Which is, it's just really getting mind to be present and to focus and to slow down, and allowing that dexterous sort of connection of getting present to the words literally makes my mind slow down and write the words, smile until you're happy, and just that moment just really gets my mind to slow down. So I start with the meditation, breathing, then I get into the journaling. I also have a lot of sound that I incorporate into that space, which is at the beginning of my meditation, is what some people call oming. To me, it's the vibration that I get to actually make, which I think is, again, a whole other topic we could talk about some other time, about the human voice and the healing power of that human voice. Is that if I can choose the way that I feel, then my voice and the words that I say are the choice of my vibration that I'm putting out in sound into my environment. And so what I do in that space is I find that there's this om that I make that is actually very grounding, that I've been able to experience all sorts of really interesting internal vibrational experiences based on the different kinds of sounds that I make with my voice, which is oftentimes just a real simple and it's so interesting because I find myself out in public doing it underneath my breath and people don't even know. And it's now, because I've programmed it into my being, it's very grounding for me and helps me when I can't maybe close my eyes or go sit down for 5 minutes, that it's just an extra little edge to help me get present in that moment when I recognize that my brain is triggering on this thing that is associated to my meditation and to like really grounding that frequency.
I would say some listeners, this might be like the most foreign thing they've ever heard. Like, you're gonna om. I lived at Kripalu for a while, which is a yoga residential center in the Berkshires of Massachusetts, and oming is something we do before and after and during yoga classes on a daily basis. And when you get together with a bunch of people and everyone ohms, oh my gosh, and your body is bathing and you feel the vibration. It is intense. It's pretty awesome. And there's other words you can say too. But it's that bassy chant of this,
Hmm.
I don't know, it's so hard to explain, but it does vibrate inside the body.
Yeah.
And I've had some interesting experiences with it too, and going out into nature and doing it.
Yes.
But if anyone has the opportunity to go do it with a group of people to
Yep.
do some oming chants, and sometimes you could do it where once you're finished your breath, then you just do it again, and so it
Yeah.
goes for like a few minutes of people oming.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
so
the other
cool.
parallel that I like to tell to people that are like, whoa, that's really foreign, I don't get that, is think about that moment where you were singing that one song that everybody was together singing together. And the first one that comes up to mind is the Journey song, right? Don't Stop Believing, right? When that song comes on, man, it gets us going, and suddenly we're all best friends and we're all screaming at the top of our lungs, don't stop, believe, right? And we're all right there, and we're all sharing vibration from our voice, and it's tied to an emotion that's significant. It's the same thing.
Mm, very cool. So
Yeah.
oming, uh, the
Oh, yeah.
diaphragmatic breathing,
Yep. Breathing,
meditation, your gratitude,
gratitude,
and the morning papers journaling. Is there
morning. Yeah. Yep.
is there anything
Yep.
else that you
Morning
do in
pages.
your morning pages? Is there anything else you do in your morning ritual?
I do. I love lifting weights and doing yoga. And so I've incorporated, like, literally, actually, it is like, it sounds weird. It's very like shifting from our normal Western culture, but like I really hold my morning typically until at least 10 a.m. for my self-care, because the way I start my day is setting that framework for the way the rest of my day is going to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I come into consciousness and I bring all of these beautiful dreams into this wonderful body that I love so much, into this wake state, and I'm able to like set that currency of my own transparency and vibration, and set the container for my day, and write down my intentions, and I focus on gratitude, and I let the flow. And maybe I had a bad dream and I'm writing it down, and I'm looking for the messaging that maybe is trying to come through, or whatever meaning making models might be triggered for me to look at, or whatever, and get my nervous system really grounded in and present. And these things it just makes my world a different place, quite literally.
Mm,
Yeah.
beautiful. I love it. I love it. Well,
Thank you.
you've got so much to share, and I love that you come from a place of authenticity and your own personal experience. And but you are a living example that we at any point in our life can begin to learn and grow and shift, and we will shed the old things that are the belief systems, the old way of being that's holding us back.
Hmm.
And we can
Hmm.
shed an old body and create a new one like you did. We can shed
Hmm.
an old belief system and create a new one. We can shed old limitations, self-imposed and also adopted from our past and from our genealogy. We can shed so many of these things and evolve, and it takes just starting, right? It takes
Yeah.
just doing every day. And we're not perfect. There's no perfection
No.
we're looking to achieve, but it's just a continuous growth. And so I
Mm.
know that my listeners are tuned into that, because obviously you're not going to listen to a podcast if especially one like this if you're not looking to grow. I want to make sure listeners know about your website. So you
Mm.
have two websites. One of them is empath-x.com. Of course, the links to everything that Jeremy does is going to be in the show notes of today's podcast at learntruehealth.com. Empath-x, and it's the dash, not D-A-S-H, it's the dash. Empath-x.com. That's a course you have. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, absolutely. So most of the things that we've been talking about today and all the things that I've been sharing is what I teach in that course. And it is really about this idea of learning your own home frequency and these abilities to be able to hack into that. And so it breaks it down into literally the conversation we've had today about body practices, mind practices, and energy practices. Yeah, that's it.
Excellent. So people who are interested in everything that Jeremy shared today can check out his website. And then you also have another website you're really passionate about called
Yeah.
vibemytribeonline.com. That's
Hmm.
vibemytribeonline.com. And that's for professionals who want to build a tribe of students, customers, followers, readers, listeners, and want to
Hmm.
support their tribe and in a way that is authentic and is a win-win situation for everyone,
Yes.
and makes the people who are following feel great, makes the professional feel great. So of course, there's many listeners who are holistic health professionals, for example, might be
Right.
interested in that. Tell us a bit about vibemytribeonline.com.
For sure. The way of the future is hyper niche communities. Because if you don't know already, there's two applications of artificial intelligence. One is military and the other one is advertising. There are bots that are programs that are on the internet that are making fake profiles and selling things to people as if they're real people. And so the robot overlords are here. And the way of our future is this idea of authenticity, that people can tell that there's a vibration of a human on the other side of things. And what's more, if we don't even want to talk about it, we don't want to consider this robot, the coming AI, maybe that's too overwhelming. Let's look at the idea of current marketing practices. We go into the space and we ask these questions that oftentimes are predicated with bias because the person that's asking is wanting to sell you something and the person that's answering is getting paid to answer those things, or there's some sort of motivation to give you this answer based on your perspective of the situation. So the data and the languaging is all skewed, and right now the state of marketing is talking about empathic marketing, where they're really trying to get a hold of how can I sell you something more. So what I say is not, I'm sorry, I take that back. If you look at Community Managers Exchange and marketing research, you're going to find that some of the best brands, some of the biggest brands are really authentically plugged into what their followers, what their clients, past and future, what really matters to them. And it's conversational. And so that's what I help people do, is I help them launch an online community where the people that really want to be part of what they're doing in the world get to engage on their level, and that you get to set your own framework of how you want to show up in the world. And again, this all goes back to the human energy, the home frequency of how your service in the marketplace shows up. And oftentimes it's in these teaching realms, which is obviously my background in education, of how you show up in this digital environment that we have, which is the global marketplace called the internet.
So it's, instead of trying to learn the new marketing technique for upsells and one-time offers and email lists and all the ways we could Frank Kern someone or Ryan Dice someone or whatever it is. And I have a lot of respect for those people in marketing,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
instead of trying to learn the new marketing techniques, or maybe entrepreneurs are totally overwhelmed because it's constantly evolving and changing, or instead
Yeah.
of learning how to do Facebook advertising, what our customers really want, because all of us are also customers. That's the cool part.
Yeah.
So we need to look, well,
Yeah.
how do I want to be treated? And I get it, because when I want to look something up, I can see through the languaging
Yeah.
and I can see how much manipulation there is. And
Yeah.
I don't want to be sold to. I want for me, I'd like to know the truth. I'd like to know the studies. I'd like to know the
Yeah.
other customers' experiences. I want to see the information and base my decisions on that, not on your sales languages or your sales tactics. And so what you're
Yeah.
saying is you teach people how to gain authentic relationships with their customers in
Mm-hmm.
an online tribe, like a Facebook group, for example,
Yep.
so that you can best serve your clients, and your clients can feel honored and feel like they're getting the best service from you, and you're really getting the guidance and the feedback from your audience. So that's
Yeah.
a great win-win. So those who are listeners who have a company or a business, and you've got a marketing budget, you should definitely look into building an online tribe. I think that's absolutely where things are going.
Yeah.
vibemytribeonline.com. That's so cool. You have a great deal of experience in the holistic health space, helping companies. So, like, especially, you were the affiliate manager for iThrive. So I feel that
Well, I want to, yeah, hang on. I was definitely not the affiliate manager. I was the community manager.
community manager. There you go. So
Yeah.
the word community, Well, see,
That
there
was
you
a
go.
whole other job. I just happened to be supporting, and that's how you and I connected through that experience.
Well, there you go. See, it builds relationships. But the point is that
Yes.
building relationships, especially in the holistic health space, is where we're going to feel like we're gaining the most rapport.
Right.
And so I think that the things that you teach are so important to both the lay people who want a
Mm.
personal growth, but also to professionals in the holistic realm. So yeah, this has
Yeah.
been so much fun having you on the show. I mean,
Yes.
we could go on and on. There's so many things we didn't even touch on that
I
I know that you
know. I know.
do,
I
and
know.
so many things in your past that I find fascinating. How can people follow you if they want to keep learning from you?
There's a couple ways. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, both as Jeremy Koester. I'm pretty open and public. Yeah, I believe in vulnerability and I practice that. So I like to share like really what's going on in my life. And so you can see the years of my development through actually looking at my Instagram feed.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
and you are welcome to join my tribe in Facebook. Go
Mm.
to Facebook and search Learn True Health for all the listeners who'd like to join our Facebook group, or you can go to learntruehealth.com/group. That'll take us to the Learn True Health Facebook group. It's an awesome community. I think we're about to reach or just surpassed 2,000 members. We're somewhere near there. So
Hmm.
it's really cool. It's very active. What I love is that I mean, I get to give my input and help listeners, but
Hmm.
everyone's helping each other. So someone says
Yes.
like, I need a new deodorant. That's a healthy, safe deodorant. What should I use?
Yeah.
And then we've got, 20 people jumping in, sharing their experiences with
Yep.
cosmetics and with home products and with different kinds of therapies and supplements
Hmm.
and diets. And the list goes on and on about the latest conversation we're having is about the healthiest forms of birth control. So, because we
Okay.
recently had an episode on that. But
Beautiful.
I've learned so many things from these women. It's
That's
fantastic.
great. I
Yeah,
love it. I love it. It's that shared knowledge, right?
exactly. So it is a community that's taken on a life of its own, and everyone's learning from each other. And we do have men in there too, because that's Learn Your Health is for everyone.
Yeah.
Jeremy, it's been a lot of fun having you on the show today.
It's been an
Um,
honor.
I
Yeah.
I want to make
Yeah.
sure that you feel that you've said everything you came here to say. Is there anything left unsaid, or is there some parting words of wisdom that you'd like to leave the listeners?
I have two things. One, parting words of wisdom is keep going. Keep going. Whatever it is, whatever you're facing, keep going. Keep going. Just don't give up. Yeah, I'm so passionate, and obviously it brings up a lot of things for me, but just like this idea of don't give up on yourself. There's somebody you can reach out to. There's somebody out there that can support you. There's someone out there that is longing to be there for you. Keep going. The second one, it's just gratitude for you, Ashley. Thank you for making this space. Thank you for showing up, creating Learn True Health. Thank you for bringing all of the information of all of these beautiful wisdom holders into the share with all of these people that are thirsting for knowledge, and for leading that and to be able to host these experiences. This has been a delight. You're lovely and wonderful, and it's obvious why you're the #1 health podcast on iTunes.
Thank you so much, Jeremy.
Of course.
I'd love to have you back anytime you have something new to teach us. It would absolutely be a pleasure. And I'm looking forward to hearing from the community as they begin to apply the teachings you've taught today. I'm looking
Mm,
forward to hearing how it impacts their lives. So thank you
yeah,
so much. And
of
I
course.
wish for you an amazing 2019. And I can't wait to see where your journey takes you.
Thank you, and same to you and your family. Blessings all around.
Are you looking to optimize your health? Are you looking to get the best supplements at the lowest price? For high quality supplements and to talk to someone about what supplements are best for you, go to takeyoursupplements.com, and one of our fantastic True Health coaches will help you pick out the right supplements for you that are the highest quality and the best price. That's takeyoursupplements.com. takeyoursupplements.com. That's takeyoursupplements.com. Be sure to ask about free shipping and our awesome referral program.